Today, we're talking with Pranav Yadav, the CEO and founder of Neuro-Insight, a global company studying what they call the deepest level of consumer decision-making, the subconscious. Can't wait for you to hear what you have to say. Pranav, thank you so much for joining me today.
My absolute pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
You started in India and you're here. It's an amazing journey. And then getting into Goldman and then realizing at probably then was the peak of the financial universe that it wasn't right for you. What was the insight?
I came here when I was 18 and went to a liberal arts college in Northfield, Minnesota. I came to New York at the age of 22 to work on Wall Street. What was clear was that Goldman was the best thing in the world out there at that stuff. What was clear was that I was not happy. So I made the difficult decision of telling Goldman that, okay, I will leave in 3 months. And I gave myself those 90 days to figure out what I would do next. And if I couldn't find a job in those 90 days, I would have to leave the country.
Oh my God, what pressure.
Yeah, and I think it was good. It brings out the best in you. I did find a job on the 89th day of the 90-day period and moved on.
That is awesome. Was the job connected to what, in fact, your next level thinking is now?
Well, it became an inspiration for the next thing. So I got into the understanding of neuroscience, the subconscious. 90% of decision making takes place in the subconscious. So regardless of the speech center sitting on the left and emotion sitting on the right, 90% of it is hidden from you. These are hidden files in your brain. And the true masters who have mastered their minds are the ones who are closer in touch with their subconscious. You see references to it in all sorts of older cultures.
Cultural literature, right?
The Gnostic scriptures talk about bringing forth what's within you. The Vedic philosophy is all about being one with yourself. All of that refers to this idea of the subconscious. Of course, now we have the scientific tools to be able to quantify it. And actually, even today, we can't really fully quantify the subconscious. But at least we can somewhat measure it. Dr. Richard Silberstein invented this technology that allows us to access the subconscious.
So I'm guessing, so this
That's
goes,
the headset.
should I put this on? Should I demonstrate how this looks on people's heads?
This is just like a shower cap that people wear on their heads. And essentially all of these little electrodes sit on different parts of the scalp.
Right,
Allows
like
us
an
to,
EEG.
Yeah, exactly. And allows us to measure the speed of the electrical activity in different parts of the brain. These set of visors are goggles that people wear, essentially have a slight flicker on the side, help us calibrate each person's individual brain activity to the actual stimulus that we're measuring.
So it's just light flickering to connect the data that you're going to be capturing with the cap to generalized data from other human beings.
Exactly.
I see.
The way the whole setup works is you come in, you have no idea. You're the target audience for a particular brand, but you actually don't know what you're coming in for. You will come in and essentially wear this headset and watch an entire TV show. And within that, there'll be 4 ad breaks with like 12 or 13 different ads because I have to set the right context.
Right.
Our work even showcases how the same ad that appears in 2 different kind of TV shows can have 2 different kinds of impacts. So you really have to set the right context for you to be able to study. I mean, on a wider scale, in a multi-channel world where people are trying to put the same ads on TV versus TikTok versus Instagram, that thing just doesn't work because each platform has a different grammar. You have Twitter, which is all words. It's engaging the left hemisphere of the brain because you're focusing on reading those specific words. So you're already in a more rational frame of mind. You are on Instagram, where you're looking at these fantastic beaches in Tulum or like skiing in Aspen.
Vail, right?
Yeah. And so your mind is in a more global thing. So it's in a more big picture thing that I want to communicate to you. It's a better medium for you to be able to do that. So setting the context is very important. Yeah. So as they go through this 30-minute experience, we'd collect data on an average about 60 people to actually pool that data together to get the statistical significance that
all you need is 60 people for statistical significance.
Correct. And funnily, this is a question that's often asked. First of all, most of neuroscience studies in the world with EEG in universities, etc., are done with way fewer people. while we have about 60 people,
see.
I am getting a 0.1 second by 0.1 second response from 60 people
I see.
across a 30-minute piece of reel, across 24 different electrodes in the brain. I'm getting millions and millions of data points. So yes, while a survey that's sent out to 2,000 people may seem a little more robust, but actually has a 20-question survey sent to 2,000 people has nowhere close to the statistical significance one would need or get when you actually study 60 people with this method. I brought a couple examples, and two that I'd love to talk about is the first one is this iconic ad called The Lost Puppy.
Yeah.
You have this guy on a farm, has these horses, has a little puppy. Puppy gets lost.
So sad. I'm
then,
already sad.
Yeah, and then the music gets a little dark. And then, you get a bunch of wolves in the background trying to get to the puppy. Puppy's a little scared, and suddenly these horses appear. There's a musical crescendo. They save the puppy. They, literally walk the puppy home, and the puppy gets to the owner, is licking the owner. Comes a blank red screen, and then Budweiser.
Right.
What an ad, right?
Winner.
Every year you have the ad meter,
Yes,
where a bunch of people vote for their favorite creatives, etc. And that year, this ad was number one.
Yeah.
The number one metric that determines whether or not people are likely to act on something, that metric is long-term memory. And unless and until you have committed the key message or brand to your long-term memory, you are not going to act on it. It is just pure entertainment. As we studied a little more, we realized that while you've told this fantastic story, you kind of have to get your key message or brand to come in at the point where people are most receptive or have opened their doorway to memory. Instead, what is happening in this creative is that they've created this beautiful story. They've brought the puppy home. The musical crescendo is over. The red screen comes up. I have given the consumer every single hint that this story has ended.
It's over.
Right?
Thank you very much.
And it's a phenomena we've studied and actually published about called conceptual closure. The brain looks at stories in quanta, in chunks. And as soon as you give it a hint that this is over, and if you're going to place your branding after you've hinted that this is coming to an end, you've just wasted millions and millions of dollars. Despite people's self-reported behavior telling you like, yeah, I vote for this ad, it doesn't actually help the brand. Quite the contrary is another example from the Super Bowl for Oatly.
It's like milk, but made for humans. It's like milk, but made for humans. Wow, wow, no cow.
It was one of the worst rated ads of the Super Bowl.
Right.
But when we actually measured the ad, the memory encoding for "Oh wow, no cow" and the brand Oatly was through the roof. And you have seen, if you look at how Oatly has performed, and they went public in the past year, it has broken all records.
Wow.
While people's self-reported behavior in that ad meter told you that it wasn't very good, it was actually a phenomenal piece of creative. And so what people say doesn't actually correlate with what they do.
There's got to be something that connects more closely with the subconscious and music. Like jingles, why aren't jingles bigger then, I'm guessing?
Speaking versus song, it's processed in a different part of the brain. So when you actually create a jingle, then you're creating a whole different route into creating a memory. When you actually wrap a piece of information around music, then you will retain more of it because you kind of combine them together,
parts of the brain.
And you're not competing with the rest of the things that you were competing with on this side.
Every marketer watching this now is like, so how do I know if my stuff is good? Like, I think, like I'm a CMO, so I think that anything I would create is awesome.
Correct.
But like, there's that doubt that I think every good CMO has. Could you have offered in that moment back to that creative team, like, can we slide the brand over here?
That's exactly what we do. What we are able to do for brands is twofold. It is diagnostic and it's predictive. The predictive element tells you that this won't work, but the diagnostic element will tell you why. When we actually come in at an earlier stage, we can look at the variety of things that you could potentially be talking about, and then tell you, hey, by the way, when you take this road or when you have this angle, this is what is most appealing to people about the story. Or if you have a new product and you're putting 5 benefits out there, 3 of those 5 benefits may be useless.
It's not necessarily how brilliant the creative is. It's to think about the actual impact, of course, the goal, or the impact that the creative will have to drive the outcome that your brand is investing in.
The distinction is between a good creative and a good ad. Okay?
Yeah.
A good creative is a story that engages anybody who's watching that story. That's a good creative. A good ad is essentially a good creative that also allows for the brand values, key messaging, and branding to come through with the story as that story is being received. You could have a great story, like actually this Budweiser puppy creative is a phenomenal creative. You cannot take that away from it.
Right.
It's a beautiful piece, but it doesn't help the brand. So it's not a great ad. So
not a great advertisement to drive behavior.
exactly. We work with all media types, and one part of it is clearly advertising and messaging, but then the other part of it is content, because culture is built on myths, on stories, on songs and rituals. As the human race, we kind of have to have a 1,000-year plan rather than a 5-year or a 10-year plan.
Yeah.
And if there is a media outlet or an organization that actually carefully thinks about the impact that they want to have, they can actually study, how do we talk about these things? True impact will come from us studying the society, coming to an agreement on like what kind of society that we want to be, and creating the new myths, the new songs. We don't have to go back to the Odyssey to get a lesson. Our kids should be able to have current myths, current stories to look at and get the same value system that we want to have as society. And this can help us do that.
I loved this.
Well, I'm so glad.
Did anyone else learn as much as I did? Because awesome.